Hotep, my name is Kamm Howard. I'm with the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America and COBRA. I'd like to call your attention to the I Am TRAYVON Call to Action campaign. The I Am TRAYVON Call to Action campaign is a series of direct action campaigns seeking justice in the name of Trayvon Martin. One particular campaign that has started here in Chicago is the I Am TRAYVON Call to Action campaign, Operation Strengthen the Disclosure. In 2002, in the city of Chicago, the city council passed the Slavery Disclosure Ordinance. In this ordinance, it mandated all companies wanting to do business with the city of Chicago to fill out a report detailing any complicity they had in the injury or enslavement of our ancestors. It was thought at that time that with these reports, activists could then take these corporations to court and file suit for reparations. In 2005, a lawsuit was filed against several major corporations, Chase Bank, Fleet Boston Financial, Wachovia Bank, CXS Railroad, Lehman Brothers, and a number of other corporations. However, the judge did not rule in that case because he stated we did not have standing to bring a lawsuit to court. He said that we were too far removed from the injury. We were not the ones who were directly injured. Neither was it our parents who were directly injured, so we did not have standing to bring the lawsuit to court. He also ruled that the statute of limitations had ran out, that you have 6 years to bring a case to the federal court once an injury has been known. So, as we know, enslavement ended close to 150 years ago, so the statute of limitations, according to this judge, had ran out. And finally, he stated that the Constitution is colorblind and that they would not hear a race-based case. In any case brought before the court that had race as its issue would not be heard. So since that time, all the corporation has had to do is fill out their slavery disclosure report and then go about their business and do the business that they intended to do with the city. That is what has happened recently with the case with Norfolk Southern Railroad. Norfolk Southern Railroad has an intermodal rail yard in the city of Chicago, in the Inglewood community, a predominantly black community. They have recently announced plans to double the size of their rail yard, an extra 83 acres. This is a $285 million project that will last over 10 years. Norfolk Southern needed 103 lots in this particular parcel that was owned by the city. So that sparked their need to file a slavery disclosure report. And they did file one. It was a 37-page report. And in this report, I counted 12,000 names of either our ancestors who had been enslaved or the enslavers who leased our ancestors to the railroad. And in many of these instances, most of the names were the enslavers. And so we don't know if they harmed or injured one of our ancestors, 10 or 100. We just don't know because they only listed their names. In some other cases where they listed the enslavers' name, they listed our ancestors' names also, who they had leased to the railroad. So we understand that this 12,000 names is severe undercounting. In addition, Norfolk Southern had 22 predecessor corporation railroads. Only 11 reported in this report. So the other 11 railroads, we don't know how many of our ancestors were injured and brutalized by them as well. So this report is a severe undercounting of the total abuse of this corporation of our ancestors. We raised this issue at a city council meeting. So when we found out about this city hearing to sell this land to the railroad, we went and gave testimony along with several other organizations in the community why this sale should not proceed as planned. Most of the other organizations centered around the issues of environmental issues. The Inglewood area has the highest rate of asthma in Chicago. It is a predominantly 99% black community. It also has the highest rates of other respiratory illnesses in the city of Chicago. And so there was environmental concerns that this railroad, this expansion would exacerbate the health issues and health challenges of the children and adults in the Inglewood community. So there were several environmental issues that were raised. There was also the issue raised about the jobs. This project was supposed to bring 400 jobs into the community. And there was concern about who these jobs would go to, what type of jobs they would be, would the residents of Inglewood qualify for the type of jobs that were coming forth. And then our issue was the issue of injury that has gone unrepaired in our community. After our testimony, the council committee took a recess and voted to sell this land, to proceed with this sale to the railroad out of chambers. So they did that quietly and secretly. But that was not the end of it, because although they had agreed to sell the land to the railroad, they had to have this area rezoned from residential to light industrial. So that gave us another opportunity to go before the city council, in this case the planning commission, to alter this issue, alter this case. It was our position that an economic enhancement package is necessary for this corporation to come in and begin the healing process in this community in which it had did so much injury over such a long period of time. So at this particular hearing at the Planning Commission, we again testified. And this time we called attention to the 50-plus years of the convict leasing system, where this railroad brutalized our ancestors after the period of enslavement. We know enslavement ended in 1865. This company began in 1832. But from 1865 onward, 50-plus years, they also leased our ancestors from the state this time, because the state instituted what was called the convict leasing system, where they would arrest our ancestors for minor crimes, and in many cases no crimes at all, lock them up for long periods of time, and then lease them out to corporations, to mining corporations, to farming corporations, to the railroads. The railroads were a big piece to this convict leasing system. And so we called attention to that. We also called attention to the fact that this was a $9 billion corporation that had 33,000 shareholders. And these 33,000 shareholders, primarily, many of them had inherited this wealth. This wealth was passed down generationally. It's what in the business community we call generational wealth, wealth that is passed down from ancestor to ancestor. And we pointed out that there were also 33,000 residents in Inglewood who also had an inheritance, and this inheritance is what sociologists call generational poverty. It's impoverishment passed down generationally. So we pointed out the connection that many of our ancestors who live in the North, many of the people who live in the North, were ran out of the South from the systems of convict leasing system, the system of lynching, the system of sharecropping. These major brutalizing systems, terroristic systems, ran our people to the North. And it's why you have many people in African people in cities like Chicago, in Inglewood, or on the South Side, or in Woodlawn on the West Side, or in Detroit, or Cleveland, or all these major cities in the North, as a direct result of the practices of these corporations like Norfolk Southern. When we finished our testimony, it was time for the planning commissioners to debate on whether or not to proceed with the sale. And the first commissioner stated that he had heard a history, and that he knew this history, and by hearing this history, he could not consciously, with good conscience, approve this sale or approve this project as it was planned, and that he motioned that there would be a 30-day delay for this company to interact with the community to resolve the issues that we had raised. Again, we raised the issue around economic enhancement, 6% of the total project cost put into an economic enhancement fund, whereby this community could engage in an economic development that would then fund some of their social development projects. The other issues were, again, environmental issues, the equipment that was being used. The environmental organizations wanted this equipment updated with better emission standards. The diesel locomotive trains, the trucks that were coming in and out, and as well as the lifters that were lifting these containers off the trains and putting them onto the trucks. They wanted all this equipment to have higher emissions, better emission standards. And the railroad had consistently said, we're going to do what we want to do in the time that we want to do it. We'll retrofit our equipment when we retrofit it. And the environmental organization said we need it done in a shorter period of time, in a period of 2 years, and the railroad wanted to take 6-8 years to do it, and we're only going to do certain equipment and not all the equipment. So that was a major victory to get this delay for 30 days. So we came back after the 30 days, prepared to continue to fight. And the railroad came into the city council with guns blazing. Prior to the other two times they were at the city council meeting, they had their chief corporation counsel and their chief sustainability officer. And the chief sustainability officer was a middle-aged white guy. Because we really defeated him in the previous session, they demoted him, fired him, or whatever. He did not come back. And instead, they hired a black man, or promoted a black man in that position of chief sustainability officer. In addition, they brought in two black women who they gave titles to also in relationship to helping the existing residents who had not sold their properties engage in a negotiating process to get their properties sold at a higher value or whatever, and help them relocate. So they gave these two sisters titles and they brought them in. They also brought in black contractors who they had awarded contracts to in the past. In addition, they brought in some black upstanding members of the community to put a community face on their project. So what we forced them to do was to change their whole process and how they were going to get this project pushed forward. In addition, they capitulated to every issue that for a year and a half they had refused to budge on. All the environmental issues, granted. The issues about the 400 jobs, they spelled out in great specificity how these jobs were going to go, what they had did in the past in regards to racial hiring, how they had exceeded the standards, and they were planning on exceeding these standards here in this project. So where they were quiet for a year and a half, where they were arrogant and came in and said they were doing nothing, we raised this issue of reparations, and they capitulated to every issue except for the reparations issue, except for the 6% economic enhancement that we were pushing. So this was a major victory, where the children of Inglewood, the air would be better. We didn't get what we wanted, but we caused and forced our issue of raising this issue of reparations or repair, forced this $9 billion corporation to capitulate and provide the type of community feedback that was sought for over a year, and the community had never received. So here we are today. We can either say, okay, let's forget about that. We won. We can rest on that victory. Let's move forward and push a slavery disclosure ordinance, an amendment to the slavery disclosure ordinance that exists, whereby it mandates 6% of any project cost of any future corporation that comes into the city and wants to do business that has a positive slavery disclosure report, and move forward from this point on all future projects. Or we can still go back and create a campaign around this issue of Norfolk Southern, still demanding, because of the over close to 100 years of injury that this corporation has done, we can still go back and continue to wage a struggle for that economic enhancement. Or we can do both. So this is where we stand today. This with the I Am TRAYVON Call to Action campaign, Operation Strengthen the Disclosure. And we thank you for coming out. And for more information, you can go to Strengthen the Disclosure on Facebook for more information on this project. Thank you.